I have about 5,000 people in a group that are doing a video as well, that have signed up for the video. And then I have you guys on the phone right now. And it's also being recorded, so I don't know why the light is so bad. So I know that there's several people, this is a work time and they can't make it during 2 o'clock hours, but this is the only time I could do it with kids not being here. So I was like, you know what, I'll just record it and you guys can have the recording. But and then I'm live in Facebook too for the people who are in my group. There's about, I don't know, yesterday we had 1,000 people on, so that was cool. So all right, let me get this going. What I'm gonna do, yes, just for, and who is that, Esther? Not if you're not reactivated now. You have to be an active member. Yep. So I am, let's see, is it showing up? Yes, it is. Okay. All right, let me go ahead and hit record and you guys enjoy this call. One sec. Okay, guys, I am here. This is Dr. Sharnael Wolverton with Swift Fire Ministries, and today we are going to speak about divine partnership. And for those of you who have been following me over the years, you know some of it, but please, I'm asking everybody to really vote my victory. This is the first time I have taught this sacred information, and it's very personal. I choose to say how it's very personal, very sacred, and again, I have not been public about this. It's taken me a little bit to be able to go public with this because honestly, I haven't been able to do it without crying through the whole thing. But God has given me some really amazing keys. And he's shown me a lot through this, and I really feel like it's super valuable for the body of Christ and for the world to be able to understand how quantum connections happen, how there is true oneness, how we are all connected in so many different ways energetically, and how partnership affects not just marriage or children or parents or business, but it affects health too. And man, I'm already crying. Okay, so my goal in this is that as I'm sharing my story and giving some of these connections, that you guys are connecting the dots in your own lives and seeing how this applies to you. So again, if we could all just be in a state of voting victory for me to get through this, and for voting victory on everyone in this call. There's several hundred people who are on this call right now, and that's growing. I see the numbers growing as we go. There's people here from Indiana and Florida and Chicago and Illinois. There's Louisiana people. Mississippi, I'm seeing you guys, I see you, and thank you for joining. Our call yesterday, we had over 1,000 people, and the call I did a few days ago had 22,300 people. So that's crazy. That's awesome that there's so many people who are interested in the subject. Now again, this is not just for people who are looking for their divine partner. Definitely if you're not married and you're looking to get married, this is an awesome class for you, because I can give you keys for that. If you are already married and maybe things aren't going the best to its capacity, and you're not striving, you're not thriving, but you're striving, this is a great class for you. If you are having issues with other family members and or partnership in business or any kind of relationship, this is a great class for you. And really, if you have a pulse, all of life is about relationship and communication. And and it affects everything. Relationship and people, you're not going to be able to get away from that unless you go in a cave somewhere and go off and never come back. So bear with me, and I'm just going to share a little bit about my story. For those of you who don't know me, I've been in full-time ministry now for 20 years. I'm a naturopathic doctor, and I'm also a full-time minister. I have 3 kids, and I have been on a path of, you know, just like everybody else, doing life and raising kids and, you know, getting through my stuff and looking for the fullness of God and the wholeness of who He is, and looking for my own fullness and wholeness. And over the years, you know, I haven't done it right, and you'll hear what I mean. I've been married a couple times on paper, and I'll explain what I mean, why I say that on paper. And to be honest with you, those relationships were not very good. There was a lot of conflict. There's a lot of stress in the past. A lot of betrayal in the past. And not just with my former partners, but in life too. Partnership with business and other relationships, just like everybody. I know that there's lots of people on the call who have had betrayal and hurt and disappointment and rejection over the years. And my goal in sharing some of this is that we would get to the point where those boundaries are different for us, and that we create something different. And it's all an inside job. And I know you guys have heard that, and I've heard that, but it really does start from the inside. So 2 former marriages on paper, and again, I'll explain that in a bit. And it was getting kind of to my last relationship was getting tougher and tougher, and we from the beginning really had counseling, because there were some things that happened right away from the start. We had 7 counselors over 7 years, and all of them did the best that they could and really did everything they could, and it just for whatever reason hadn't worked. We went to multiple people all over the United States and retreats and everything, and I just wasn't seeing anything different. And it came to a head, you know, several years ago, and I just kept staying and hoping that things would change like everybody. And I'm a very loyal person. Sorry. I am going to get through this. I choose to get through this. Very loyal person, and so, you know, and I'm a Christian, and God is in me, and I can see the good in other people. And so, you know, you want to keep your family together, and you want to stay. And so I did what a lot of people do. I stayed, and I just kept hoping and praying that things would be different. And it was starting to really affect my children and my health. And in January last year, it's been a year now, I was actually, and this has not been public, but in January, I remember the date, the 20th, I was diagnosed with cancer. And that was a huge wake-up call for me. I felt like I was in another world, like maybe they were talking about somebody else. I was actually with a doctor who I've worked with and shared multiple patients with and clients with, and so we were kind of talking, and then all the tests come back, and all of a sudden, this is about me. And I mean, literally driving home, and I felt like the floor dropped out from underneath me. And you know, this is after several times in that relationship we had separated and got back together, and separated and got back together, and done some things. But this was kind of like huge, because it was very serious at this point, because it was like do or die for my health, and really focusing on having a environment that was supporting ease and peace and love and security, and not constant fight or flight and stress and conflict, because all of those things can actually really truly affect the immune system. And I mean, even the doctor said, you know, he knew what was going on, and he knew he's actually my former's doctor since he was born, and he basically said, you know, this is not good, what's been going on. And he told us straight up why this was happening, and that, you know, a person's body is not meant to be in fight or flight for 7 years. And we looked at different patterns and all of this stuff, and it just came back that you know, this was really serious. And I thought that would be the rock bottom. I thought that things would change, and they did for a little bit, and then they didn't anymore. And it kind of went back to what was normal for us at that time. And I had to make some really tough decisions and be the one to end it. And I did so hoping that that would be the rock bottom. Maybe that would be the rock bottom, and that things could turn around. But instead, it wasn't. And so, again, I stayed and just worked on me. And the last counselor that we were working with is named Robert Stevens. If you guys have heard, this is a man who I adore and love, and we've done several meetings together now, and maybe some of you have been a part of those meetings or part of the conference calls. But one thing that, when all of this happened, you know, he came to me personally, and he was like, okay, so we've worked together and that didn't work, but I am encouraging you to work with me personally to find out what the deal is with these patterns with you, because I think it's important for your health to get some ease. And I was very open to that, because there were several patterns that were going on, not only with the abuse and conflict and strain and stress of male partnership in my history, but I had some other patterns, like I had mentioned before, betrayal in business, betrayal in friends, and then some weird patterns that I didn't actually think had anything to do with this at first, but over time I've realized that everything is connected. Everything is connected. And some of those patterns look like, if I would order something at the restaurant, like for food, it would come back wrong. And I don't mean like once or twice. I mean like for years. This has been 20-something years that it was a joke that people would know that if they went to eat with me that I wasn't going to get my food, and I'll probably end up having to box it, because by the time they fixed it and finally did it right after the second or the third time, then everybody would be finished and I would have to bring it home. So that was one in the past. Another thing would be, even if I ordered anything online or at a store or anything, it would come in wrong. And no matter what, if I like went over things verbally, written, you know, had other people double check, that would come back wrong. And I had been to so many people to find out what these patterns were. I would be in about to purchase a house. There was a time when I was looking for a house, and I think I made 5 or 6, maybe 7 offers on different houses, and it would be all set to be going through financing and everything, and then literally like within a month, sometimes a week, sometimes 2 weeks right before we were supposed to close, the person would back out. That was another pattern in the past that followed, and that happened numerous times over several years. And also even with land deals, contracts, different things in the past, that was another pattern. And so I know this is a lot of information, but I'm giving you a big picture here, and you will be able to see the whole thing in a bit once all these pieces are together. And to me too, I'm learning that this is all connected. So I sat down with Robert Stevens, and I'm just going to give you the language of what he said, because I'm just being honest. What he said is, so let's talk about your patterns with male figures. He said, the first thing he asked is, was your dad a bad guy? And that's not the word he used, but he said, was your dad a bad guy? And or is your dad a bad guy? And I said, no, my dad is amazing. He is loyal. He works hard. He's a great role model to me, to my kids, to my family, to my formers. And my mom and him are still married. They've been married almost 50 years. There's major loyalty. They hang out, they date, they kiss, they make out, they go, they sit together on the couch and hold hands. They're always holding hands. He gets the car door for her. I mean, my dad isn't the reason. And so Bob said, well, let's look at some other things. And so he basically went back from my past relationship and all the way down and looked for where the pattern may have started and what could have been the thing that kept this thing going. And so we looked at it, and it was like bad guy, bad guy, bad guy, bad guy. 4 bad guys in a row who all had very similar set of skills to be, let's say skills, a set of patterns that weren't conducive for a peaceful, loving environment. And it seemed like, looking back now, even they progressively increased on damage and or bad guy-ness. It's like the message kept getting louder and louder, and with each relationship. And so then we went back to the 5th, and I just mean like boyfriends or whatever. I've had a couple boyfriends for a couple years at a time and just stayed and whatever. And then it got back to my high school college boyfriend who basically that was my first boyfriend and my first love, and I literally could not think of one bad thing about him. And Bob kept saying, well, there's got to be something, like, really think about it, da 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 da, and I couldn't think of anything. And so he was like, yay, good. There's like, this is good news. You can pick a good person. That's positive. And we started from there. He asked me why it didn't work out. And I went into, the details of that, which, we were supposed to get married. We were engaged and we were supposed to get married. And I got cold feet and called it off to go seek God and make sure that this is the right thing. I didn't end up seeking God. I made a lot of poor decisions. And as a religious education major, I was finding myself going to bars and doing things that were really out of character. Again, this is really honest information. I was in my early 20s at that time. I'd never done anything wrong. I never even cussed or went out or had anything to drink or smoke or anything. No drugs. And, I was making dumb decisions. And at the time, my boyfriend, fiance at the time, basically was probably like, who are you? Like, how did this happen? And what are you doing? And I thought you were seeking God about this. And, I was going to fast and pray. And it looked like not fasting and praying. And so, and out of his love and protection for me, he would actually go to these places, or I don't know if he did it on purpose or randomly, but there he was most of the time. And he would not confront me or judge me or even speak to me, but he would just sit quietly in the corner and whatever. And like I said, I don't know if that was on purpose or if we just happened to be at the same places. And it wasn't in his character to be at those places for sure, I could tell you that. And he would even come with people that had never been. So I knew, there were a youth pastor and another guy that would come, and we were all just there. And over time, instead of me being really excited about his protection and loving place, one day when he walked in, my quote friends that were not really my friends, but people I was hanging out with at the time were like, oh, he's stalking you and da 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 da. And trust me, I'm going somewhere with this. Anyway, I went over there and I went off on him, and it wasn't good. I said a lot of things that I shouldn't have said, and he basically heard me and turned around and walked away, and I went on with my life. And he actually left school not long after that, and I immediately that night even and the next day felt and knew that I did the wrong thing and said some things that I didn't mean and were complete lies and just terrible things. And anyway, so this is back when there's no Facebook, no cell phones. If you're going to contact someone, you have to drive in your car and go find them or go to their house. Like, we didn't have email or anything like that. And so I did try to, I looked for them and tried to apologize, and was choosing to apologize, but that just, I wasn't finding them and it wasn't working. And so anyway, he ended up leaving and moving, and he moved back to where his folks lived, and I went on with life and held that energy of not being able to express my sorrow and my regret and to get forgiveness and to move on. And there were a couple times, there's lots of times we could have seen each other with, people that we knew in high school or college, weddings, funerals, reunions, get-togethers, high school homecomings, college homecomings, and he was never there. And when I would see his friends, I would always hope and get all anxious before those events because I thought he would be there and that would be my time. I could apologize and to be, he would never come. And for whatever reason, he wasn't there. And I even had one of his friends that I asked about him, and I would give him my information and say, will you please have him contact me? And one actually said, well, he's not going to be here. It's something like this because he's going to know you're here. And so that was helpful, not. And so, so anyway, all this to say, I carried that. And there's an energy to that I see now. And there was just some disruptive holding pattern there at that point in the past, and had no understanding of that at the time, and no connecting of that at the time. And I ended up moving when I finished school. I came back here. I thought, maybe I could go apologize and find him. I did look for him, and I did see him one time in '94. I was at work and he walked in to where my workplace was, and he was with someone, and I was shocked that he walked in, and there wasn't a whole lot of talk. The person that he was with, somehow when I introduced myself, she knew who I was, and she said, yeah, I know who you are. And it wasn't the way she said it, I knew that wasn't, I wasn't sure if that was good. And she's like, I've heard about you, yes. And they kind of left, and the next day I was on my way to work for a manager meeting, and it was like several hours away, and I was driving, and there was like two cars that were next to my car and another car, and I looked over and I saw that it was them, and she was in the passenger seat. She kind of gave me a dirty look, and I was shocked, and they probably thought I was stalking them or something, and I wasn't actually stalking them at that day, although I had looked for them for years. That day I wasn't looking for them, and she kind of did a motion like, go faster, and they took off. And several months later, she actually came back to my store and let me know that they were finished and that I could have them, and that she was never going to be me. And I had just got married, like a few weeks, maybe just a few weeks before that moment. And so what do you do? So again, that holding pattern, not being able to get forgiveness, talk to him, explain, never for the purpose of getting back or anything like that, but just to clear that energy. And so I stayed married, and I won't go into the details of that. It was pretty bad. We were in separate rooms most of the time of 13 years that we were together, and several times of separation for similar things that I discussed at the beginning. And anyway, so let me fast forward to Bob and where we are. He basically told me the first thing I need to do was to go find this guy and to apologize to him and clear that out. And over the years in between the marriages, I actually had looked for him on Facebook and tried to find him to be able to express ask for forgiveness. And he wasn't on Facebook or anything like that. And so this time I looked again, and I did see that he had a Facebook page. He hadn't posted anything in forever. I think there was like a couple birthday announcements from a couple years ago. There was no cover picture, no profile picture. I didn't show where he lived or anything at the time, and so I didn't have a lot of information. And it took me a month to actually have the guts to contact him just to apologize. I was so nervous that he just hated me, and didn't really know what to say. But there were a couple of things that happened, and this is it. This is for you and interesting. I started realizing that my patterns were shifting to my kids. My daughter Shane had been seeing this guy for a couple years, and they were, very serious and kind of leading in the Christian arenas, like Brian and I. I mean, Brian was the football captain, and I was cheerleader in high school. In college, and dance team in high school, and we were leaders in our community for Christian God things, and went to Bible school and all that. And now here my kids are doing kind of the same thing, even going to the same church. So it's interesting, and it connected to me one day when I started seeing some things. I started realizing that Shane's boyfriend of 2 years actually lived in the same house that Brian lived in for a little while. And it just hit me like, wow, I don't want this to repeat to my kids. And so that was one thing. And then there was another thing. Something had spilled on a pillow, and I was trying to get the smell out with oils and all kinds of things, and it just wasn't working. And I went and looked in the cabinet, and I found some cologne, and I was doing just some quick thing, and I went and sprayed it. And as soon as I sprayed it, I immediately had a memory of Brian, and I was like, wow, what is this? And it was like Polo cologne or something, and I guess he wore that, and I didn't even remember that or think that. But and that night I was doing a class with the ULA guys, and when we got on the phone, the ULA guys were talking about, one of the guys was saying how smell is so connected to memories, and how the olfactory system, and he said that there was a cologne, and he knew nothing about what had happened that day, but he said there was a cologne that his wife wears every now and then, and when she does, that he immediately goes back to like high school, and it's like they were kids again, and he can have all these memories from that point. And he said that they had been together for 30 years now, and we would have been together for 30 years, and we were in high school, so it was just another indication. So I finally got the guts to contact him, and he responded right away, and I was going to I thought that I could do that on, just through Facebook or something, but the more I thought about it, I was like, I contacted him back and I said, I really would like to see you in person. This is too sacred to do over the phone or a text or, a Facebook message. Like, this is 25 years of stuff. And then I didn't hear from him back. And I was super freaked out that I wasn't going to be able to do this. So I contacted Bob after 7 days of not hearing back from him. I think it was close to 7 days. And finally I said, what do you do to break the pattern? And I explained what was going on with Shane and stuff. So what do you do to break the pattern, or to change and shift the pattern if the person will not talk to you? And he said, do it on the inside. And I was like, what does that mean? And he explained, everything that you would ever say to him or choose to say to him, just pretend like you're saying it to him and say it out loud, or write it in a letter, or do something so he can, so that it's just energy. Everything's energy anyway. So for you at home, this is good. And I'm thinking, why didn't you tell me that like a month ago? That would have been good to know, because I would have been through all this and I wouldn't have had to do it live. But so I did. I walked around my block and I cried and I said all the things I would have said, and I tried to choose to remember everything that what it was. And I sat in my driveway and I looked up at the stars, and I remember thinking, Thank you, God, for, changing and shifting the patterns now, and all these patterns are going to work out now. And, I just bless him and I bless me, and I thank you that I can move on now. And I laid down in my driveway and was looking up at the stars, praying to God, and literally my phone rang, and I got a message from or a text from him that basically said, "Okay, I'll meet you." I think it was a phone. It might have been a phone call. I don't know. A message of some kind, communication came through and said, "Okay, I'll meet you in person." And I was like, that was quick. And so the minute that I did that outside, there was an environmental shift. And so that's important for you to connect with. So I did get to meet with him. I said all the things that I chose to say. Now, mind you, in the process of this, I am going through treatments for cancer. I'm not doing chemo, and I don't suggest anybody do that. But I was on hyperbaric chamber. I was doing IVs. I was doing oils in every part of my body that you could possibly do oils. I was doing lots of supplements, juicing. I was off sugar. I'm still off sugar. I was using a Rife machine. I was getting raindropped 2-3 times a week. I'm live blood analysis, lots of testing. I was working with 4 or 5 different doctors who are all doing different things, infrared sauna, all of this, it was hours and hours and hours a day. And some of you know that that's why I wasn't traveling, and I'm still not traveling like I was, just because I'm still doing some of that. But, and when I would go in for my checkup, when they would do the testing, my numbers would show up really high with tumor necrosis factor and my natural killer cells. And like 1,000 is the worst. And I would be in the 900s. And this had gone on for 16 weeks of therapy, and the numbers were not moving at the time. And emotionally, there was the things that would show up on the machine that indicated that there was a lot of emotion attached to this, and that it wasn't as much physical as it was emotion. And Bob would tell you that the C word is the feeling of I can't, I got to, but I can't, I got to, but I can't. And even saying the words I can't, please choose other words, cancel I can't, because I can do all things in Christ. Christ is in me, and God can do anything through me. But there are certain body functions that happened just on a science level with certain phrases that we say, because our words have a vibration. And so in the process of doing all of these, I went to go see Brian, and on my, I had some closure. We walked away. I drove home, and I remember crying like the whole way home. And just feeling relief more than anything, knowing that this is gonna be good now, that my life has changed, like that was a chapter closed. And I woke up the next morning, and I was grieving, and I don't know why I was grieving, and went through a bunch of different things. And I talked to a few people and talked through it, and realized that I was grieving, I think I never maybe grieved the breakup, but also I was grieving me, grieving the person somehow sitting across from him and saying everything that I said. I actually had a memory of who I was when I was with him, and even who I was before I was with him. And that person was true. That person was creative. That person didn't have fear. That person walked in just a whole different way than the person that I had become. And I had boldness and love, and I wrote songs and painted and did all these fun things, and I had fun, and I didn't have that for a long time. And so, and it's okay to go ahead and grieve all those things and do that. And so I went to the doctor after I met with him, and my numbers had dropped 200 points just from that one meeting. And everybody that was there were like, what are you doing? What's different? Like, what happened here? And I was like, I don't know, and just kind of didn't really go into it. And they were like, well, keep doing that. And then I went to another doctor. I went to Dr. Lucky And same thing, he had noticed that there was a lot of changes in my body that for the positive, and he actually even found a program in my body of when I was, that there was a male figure who was around the time I was 16, 17 that I quote lost, and that my body had now accepted it, and that I was going into healing mode. That's in my body. I'm like, okay, I didn't, the stuff that they can trace and track with the machines and the energy and all that. I mean, there's programming and muscle testing and all kinds of stuff that that happened with that, and just super interesting. He actually had me hooked up to all these machines at one point, and I thought we were just sitting there talking. I didn't know that this was part of the test, and there was like a baseline of the level like this, and in the process he started asking me questions about my former, and then he started asking me questions about this person that was the 16-17-year-old when I was 16-17-year-old, and he was like, so would that be your first husband? And then I was like, no, actually it was my boyfriend in high school. And we went, and I'm still not realizing that he's testing, and it was actually testing my immunity, and I should have been in the thousands. And when he turned the screen around for me to see it, this baseline, it was mostly down here in the bottom, which is not where you should be. And my numbers were only like 163 for immunity as opposed to 1,000. And so he said, do you see this? He's like, all of these under spikes, that is when you were talking about your former. He was like, don't talk about your former, don't hang out with your former, don't go see your former, don't have anything to do with your former. And he said, you wouldn't even had a 163, except for there were a couple spikes. And he was like, you know what those spikes were? And I was like, no. And he said, that's when you were talking about Brian. He's like, talk about Brian, go see Brian, hang out with Brian, whatever it is, Brian's healing. And so I was like, okay. So I had not talked to him, and I was actually supposed to go to Hawaii for my diamond trip, and I was thinking about not going because I was in all these treatments, and I was a little bit fearful of taking a week off of all my treatments because I was now starting to get better. And there were some other things that happened. I met with Robert Stevens, and he found a couple 4 death wishes in one of my eyes cancel and clear that, and he worked with me on some of that with the bio-optic, and he kept basically told me to say I can, and I am, and I can, I am, and I can, I am, and I can, over and over and over until I was crying, and just whatever. I went to the bathroom, and all this black stuff came out of me. A lot of tumors came out, and that was pretty interesting. So that happened, and then I sent him a journal. I sent Brian a journal just as a thank you, and tell, just, hey, take care of yourself, thanks for meeting with me kind of deal. I went to Hawaii, and I was sitting on the side of the beach with some friends from our diamond group who happened to be really good friends but also counselors, and they noticed that I had been crying a lot, and they're like, what do you think the crying's about? What's going on with you? Are you okay? And do you think you miss your former? Is that what's happening? And I said, I care about this person, I love this person, but that's not it. I'm choosing to know what it is that's causing all this grief, and I think I told them, I think I miss me. And explained that, and and that's normal. It's been 25 years since I was awake, and maybe some of you need to choose to wake up too. I don't know what your situation is, but when you wake up and you've been asleep for 25 years, it's a little bit alarming to remember who you are, like I had been in a coma or something, canceled. And so, a lot of the great things came out of that. I got 3 kids, but I wasn't me. And I was doing a lot of things out of religious purposes, or thinking that this is the right thing to do, or being the good girl, or, not giving up on people. But I lost myself in the middle of that. And so was explaining this to the person, the couple that I was there, and right while I'm sitting there, I get a text from Brian, and he basically was showing me, thank you for, I got the journal, thanks a lot, and sent some old pictures that he had kept from us. And oh, I forgot to mention, let me go back. When I was diagnosed on January 20th, the Lord told me to go home and put on this necklace. It's a golden necklace. It has, I don't know if you could see it for those of you who are in the video. It's my name with a diamond. And when I met with Brian, he basically said, hey, where'd you get that necklace? And I explained to him I got it from my mom when I was in high school, and I hadn't wore it for a long time, and how I felt like God told me to put it back on the day I was diagnosed, and I hadn't worn it since the 90s. And the reason why I put it on is, God had said it's time to reconnect with you. Dis-ease has to do with not being who you are, not being true. If you're not true, you will have issues with your health. It's just, you gotta not only speak truth, but live truth. And so, I had put that necklace on, and, he said, I think I remember that necklace. And I was like, well, it would have been the time around when I was with you, and you probably saw me wearing it or whatever. And he was like, no, I think I got that necklace for you. And I was like, no, my mom did. I had a ring to match, and da-da-da-da. So, in the middle, again, fast forward, I'm in Hawaii, and he sends, a journal entry, and he shows me back in 1988, September 14th, and it was my birthday, and he had written on there back then, Sharnael's 18th birthday, sent her 18 roses for her birthday, which is so super sweet, and gave her a birthday party at church that night, and gave her the golden necklace with her name on it and the diamond. And I about fell out of my beach chair. I mean, I was like, no freaking way. Like, you're the one who gave me this necklace. And I had no memory of that. And I just thought, how interesting is it that the moment I hit rock bottom and knew that I had to connect with me again, that's the exact necklace that I chose to put on to connect with me again, is the person that I was then. And I started studying a lot about entrainment, and I'll probably go into that a little bit, but there is energy in objects. That's why God has told us to bless objects or pray for objects. There's energy in all that, and I just thought it was super interesting. We have this 12-inch, 15-inch field around us, of energy and electromagnetic energy here, and different people can affect that. Our thoughts can change that. Our feelings definitely change that. Objects can change that. Other people can change that. Your vibe or your frequency can change with different things. Oils can make that shift and go higher. The higher the frequency you are, the better. The better for you to keep wholeness in your body. We're 62 megahertz on a healthy adult day, and different things can cause your megahertz to drop, and when it drops, then you can get really sick. And when you get below 45, that's when cancer starts. Cancel. So I thought it was interesting that here I am wearing this necklace, and that there had to be some connection there with that necklace and my name, and the fact that he gave it to me. It was almost like a territorial thing or something. I don't know. Who knows? Not only with God, but maybe even with Brian. Who knows? So when I got home, I went back to the doctor. By the way, Brian we talked, I think every day after that. And even I FaceTimed for the first time. I never had did that video thing like I'm doing with you guys. And we talked 5 hours that day on the beach, that he sent those pictures and the necklace, and shared some things, and that was pretty much the beginning of us talking to one another and reconnecting on a friendship level, and building that friendship again, and seeing where that went. And when I got back home and went to the doctor, my numbers dropped to the 500s. So I went from the late 900s to the 500s, and of course my doctor was all my doctors were happy. I went to through 5 different doctors and 4 different clinics, and all of them verified that my body was healing, and I was healing. And I know that all of the things that I was doing helped support my system to be able to do the things that I was doing. I also know that it was healing energetically. I also know it was reconnecting with God and consciousness. There are several factors that worked for that healing process, and I'm sharing all this with you because I'm choosing for you to get this and to understand that all of you have people in your life that you may need to get things straight, and it could change some things. I'll tell you too that after that happened, not only was my body on this rapid pace of healing and being healed, but all of those patterns that I shared with you about ordering things and getting them wrong, that went away completely. Like, I haven't had those issues anymore after that, and which is like a freaking miracle. Like, freaking go call Guinness Book of World Records and let them know that these patterns are done, because they really are over. And that's crazy. But if you look at it energetically, I kind of ordered something and didn't get, the things that I had ordered, I wasn't getting them. And if you look at what I did, I was doing that too. I walked away from something that was real and didn't finish, and there was no closure, and that energy loop kind of just stayed there. So now I have a couple more things to share. I went to the doctor, and here's some parts that will really, really hopefully connect with you guys. Went to the doctor, and Dr. Lucky is a Pentecostal pastor. I love him. He's an MD and an ND. If you choose to go see him, he's in Mississippi. His name is Dr. Thomas Lucky. Absolutely the best doctor, my doctor, and I will drive far away to go see him because he's amazing. Well, he, in my past, had, when he does sit down with you to intake you, you have to give him your name and all your information, just like any other doctor. And when he went through all that, in the past, when I would give him my name, Sharnael Wolverton, he would always ask for my full name. And I kept telling him, my full name is Sharnael Wolverton. I've always been Sharnael Wolverton. That's who I am. And he would always want me to include my former people's last name. And he would, for the sake of the testing, but he encouraged me over the years to go ahead and take these people's names, because he thought that maybe that was a disrupting the flow of our covenant, because I had not taken these people's names. And I would say, okay, I just don't feel like I'm supposed to do that. Everything in me wouldn't let that happen. And it wasn't, I don't know how to explain it, but in my heart and in my gut, I knew I couldn't take these people's last names, and that I was me. And so I said, okay, well, go ahead and test me and see if I'm supposed to take these last names. And when he did, it showed that my body would not allow it. I could not be Sharnael, those people, last names. I had to be Sharnael. I was Sharnael Wolverton at that moment. Or actually, we didn't go into that testing of who I actually was, but it showed that I could not take on their last names. And he was always perplexed by that and a little frustrated, because I went against his own, moral code of covenant and biblical everything, covenant. So now fast forward, when I went back again, I actually had a practitioner, Olivia Bennett, who's amazing. She tests me periodically, and one day I was sitting there thinking, the paperwork had not been finished yet. We were right at the last days of the paperwork, and I was just curious and thought, for some reason, this comes to my mind is, can you test me to see if I'm still married? Even though the paperwork isn't going to go in for the next couple of days, can you just test me and see if I'm still married? And to my former, and when she tested me, it showed that I was not married to this person. And I was like, wow, that's interesting, because it never occurred to me that my body would have actually already proven that I wasn't married. And there was another thing, I am super by the book when it comes to contracts and laws and all of that. And in the past, I would have wore my ring all the way till the end of the last day of the divorce being, quote, final on paper. And somewhere in the middle of waiting for the paperwork, I remember sitting in my bed and the Lord told me to take the ring off. And I was like, what? I can't, I don't know. I choose to know. And the Lord actually, he told me that it was a mockery of his covenant. And I didn't understand that. But I was obedient. I shared that with a couple of people and I asked for their input. And they were like, the Lord told me that I was never married to him. And that was kind of sad. And now here I had proof that I was actually tested that I wasn't married to him. So that kind of made sense and was confirmation, but yet still. So then I was curious and I was like, okay, so was I ever married to him? And they tested and it showed no. So not just the last name, but also that I was never married to him. And then I went in a panic because I was like, oh no. Does that mean I'm still married to my first husband? Who, that wasn't even definitely not a legit marriage. It was a green card situation. So, which I didn't find out till later. And this is, again, this is sacred, private information that's now in public. But, so yeah, I tested to see if I was married to him still, because that concerned me. And it said no. And I was like, oh. And then I was almost disappointed because here I was like, okay, was I ever married to him? No, it showed I wasn't. And I'm thinking, to be honest, I started crying because I was mortified that I had spent 25 years on paper being married to two people and even had kids with one of them. And for what? For not living true. None of it was truth to God. None of it was truth to my body. And, if you're with someone who you're technically not married to, but except for being on paper, that is not living true. And I'm not telling everybody to go out and get a divorce. You're going to have to just take this information to the Lord and figure out what this means to you personally. I wasn't in the situation where I found that information out and I was still married. So, I don't know what's right for you. Again, you got to follow your own heart and your own path. I'm just telling you, for me, this is what happened to me. This is my story. And it showed that I was never married to either of these people. So then it came to me, well, have I ever been married? And when they tested, it said yes. And I said, okay, well, when did I get married? And it showed November 7th, 1987. And that number meant absolutely nothing to me. Those dates meant absolutely nothing to me. I wrote it down. I kind of shelved it because I was like, that doesn't mean anything to me. And I went on with my life and I was stumped, and I grieved a lot because, again, what is marriage then? I had all these questions like, what is true, then what is real and true partnership and relationship and covenant, and how does God look at marriage? If we're looking at marriage, the United States of America had said we were married. We had made vows to one another. Like, where does that fit? So anyway, still processing that and going through, and I asked later on, actually, I had, I think, a date or two with Brian. I think it was our third date. We had finally started kind of seeing each other and more than friends kind of deal. And when I went to his house one day, he cooked me dinner. He's so sweet. And he had all these pictures and journals and calendars out everywhere. And I went to look at one of the calendars. It's like one of those 3-year calendars. And he had my birthday circled for each year, 87, 88, 89. We were actually together, I think, till 91 or 92. So we had several years. He says 3.5. I think it was 4 something. I don't have actual numbers, but it was 87 to 91 or 92. So you do the math. But he had it circled. My birthday, and then January 2nd, his birthday, and then he had November 6th circled on all the years. And I was like, what's November 6th? And he said, you don't remember? And I said, no. And he said, that's the day that you came to my football practice while I was, you snuck in while I was at football practice, and you left that note on my car with your phone number and your picture, and you asked me to call you. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. And I could actually even see myself doing it. I had the memory of doing it and being butterflies in the stomach and, the whole thing, and like trying to drive away so he wouldn't see me. I remember all that. And I said, so what was November 7th? And he said, I did call you that night, and I think we went out the next day. We might have like kissed for our first time or something. It was our first date, November 7th. And I'm sitting here just amazed, because November 7th, 1987 was the day that showed up that I was married to him. So, he was the only person in November 7th, 1987. So it had to be him that I was married to. Now, I didn't tell him, by the way, we're married. It was like third date or whatever. And I don't want to overload him with quantum, information, conscious quantum, God's, whatever. And it wasn't until later, but I did test him, and I asked him, some of the same questions. If he had ever been married, if he is married to me, if he was married to his former, was he married on November 7th, 1987? And it came back the same. And so here we were, married in 1987, and didn't know it. Our bodies knew it, our spirit knew it, God knew it. Marriages are made in heaven, and we may not be awake to know that it's happening. And it has absolutely nothing to do with what's on paper. That is a man-made thing. I love man-made things. I'm a law-abiding person. I'm not saying be rebellious and go run off and say that you're married now and live like you're married now. I'm not giving you a license to live in sin or do anything like that. I'm just saying that on a physical, quantum, energetic level, for some reason, we were already married November 7th, 1987, without even having the head knowledge that had happened. And so a couple other things I just want to touch on. And you guys may be processing some of this what I was, because I am still in the midst of processing. One of the things that came up is when Bob works with people, and even when Dr. Lucky or any kind of energetic changes and shifts within us, when we shift, we actually shift everything that touches the hem of our garment. And so through all of the work that I had done with Bob, even while I was with my former, some people had asked me, I wonder why the former at the time wasn't shifting too, because everything that you do within, if we're one, then why aren't both of us shifting together like other people had done that he had worked with? He had worked with individuals, and it automatically shifted the other person because they were one in God's eyes. And for whatever reason, that didn't happen to my former. And now that I realized that he wasn't even my partner, then all of that work that I had done within me, and I'm going to share some of that consciously, was actually shifting Brian, who lives in another city and had no knowledge of me doing this work within me, or any knowledge of my existence at the time. So, there's this quantum connection. It's called entanglement. It's also called oneness. It's also called, the quantum physics people would call it entanglement. And so if you take a cell and you split it, and you have two cells, they could be in different states away, and if you do something to cause this one to vibrate, the other one's going to automatically vibrate because they're still connected on that quantum level. And when we went back, Brian and I, and looked at some of the things, we were doing the same things at the same time, even though we were away from each other and not really connecting on that level, or even speaking to one another. We were having babies at the same time. Our kids are the same age. We were doing different things the same. I mean, even when I met with him, he has this amazing garden full of sage and citronella and lavender and peppermint and all these things that I have in these bottles. Like, I'm like, this is so interesting that we are on the same path and doing the same things and learning the same things, without even realizing that we are connected and that we're still connected. And so that's something that one thing that came up. Another thing that came up to me that I learned as the weeks went through, and I'm still processing, is why was I getting these people who were, quote, cheating and betraying me over the time? Because it was, 4 or 5 relationships in between there, and even cheating with or betrayment from business partners or whatever. And if you realize that I was, quote, married to someone else, then basically those farmers on paper, that was adultery. Not which, a little bit over my head, but that to know that time spent and invested with those people would be considered adultery if I was really married to someone else. So, and whatever you are in that vibe is what you get back. So I was lying to myself. I wasn't being true. Therefore, I was getting liars and betrayers in my life and attracting that vibe into me, whether it was through relationships of people that I was, quote, married to, or business, or anything. I had in the past constant stream of people who weren't following through and who were lying because I myself was lying. Does that make sense to you? I hope that makes sense. And so your frequency, your heart is electric. My heart is electric. I worked in cardiac rehab. I saw surgeons who over and over told me that they could actually see electricity in the body. Electricity and frequency in that heart, because of what you're thinking, what you're saying, what you're feeling, that connects with the heart, creates a vibe and a frequency. Words create a frequency. Those things will vibe through all of your cells and also into that field. And that field has a current or a frequency or a vibe. And whatever that vibe is in your field is what you will, quote, attract. It looks for a match. It's like looking for something to connect. And it will only find what it matches. And so if you are valuing yourself, if you're loving yourself on the inside, if you're making these decrees and believing who you are is, I am love, I'm already loved, I am valued, I am honored everywhere I go. And those are my boundaries. As I'm speaking that, thinking that, feeling that in my heart, my energy, my heart actually creates a current that surrounds me in that field. And therefore the only people who can show up and match me would be people who value me, love me, honor me, whatever the decree is. So if I did not honor me, if I did not love myself in the past, then I'm going to get people who don't value me, who don't honor me, who are lying because I was lying in the past. I was lying to myself and lying to them even though they didn't know that. And they can only come at your level. They're only going to match at your level. So, and that goes for kids, parents, work people, everything. If your value is honor and respect and truth, and you're living true, then your health, your body, your business, your finances, everything falls in place because you are living true. And living true is so important. I had an encounter back in 2009, I believe it was, where 2 angels came to me, and one of them was named True. And there was volumes of books and a desk, an ancient desk there with all these volumes as tall as the ceiling, and they were looking through and they were reading all these testimonies of different people who were healed by different things. And I looked at them, and one of them looked at me and said, what do you want? That's what he said. And I said, I want to be a part of that. It was like names of who their names were, the dates, what they were healed of, and what different specific essential oils they used to get healed from. And I'm just telling you my story. But and it was records and records and volumes of thousands of people who were healed. And he said, what do you want? And I said, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that. And they slammed the book, and the guy slammed the book, and I knew his name was True for whatever reason. I don't know the other person's name, the other angel's name. And he said, okay. And then he pointed at me very serious, and he looked at me and he said, tell them they're not truly living unless they're living true. And even now, when I say that, I feel the energy and the vibe of that communication to me, and how it hit every cell in my body. And I knew there were so many dimensions. It was powerful. It shook me. I was shaking for hours and days, and just processing that moment of just a few words. And you know, God's word is that powerful, and our word, God in us, can be that powerful when we get to that true vibe of love and intention of love. And living true is huge. Living true will touch your health and your finances and your family, and harmony and union to everything in your surroundings. Everything will shift, and everything has shifted, and everything continues to shift and evolve into more and more purity and love and peace, and it's awesome. And so, yeah, some of the decrees that you may choose to say is, I am already loved before I even show up, before I even get there. I am my divine partner. Because when I am my own divine partner, and I'm not relying on conditions of other people or what anyone else is doing, or having any sort of dependency or codependency on other people, you know, if someone else cannot make me happy, God in me is happy. God in me is joy. And when I connect with remembering that I am already loved, I am joy, God in me is joy, God in me is love, God in me is honor, God in me is respect, I am that I am, I can and I am. You know, those kind of statements actually create a frequency and a vibe, again, where that's what comes to me now as a match, because that's where I am. And I believe that that's why Brian was finally allowed to come to that process of being awake to remember me and to remember him, because we were both whatever. I had to forgive me, and I had to go through all this process for him to even see me, to him to even feel my vibe, for him to even be able to come into my realm, because the unlove that I had in the past, he couldn't join in with that. He's only love. He's pure love. And so he could only be in the presence of that. And so I encourage all of you, if there's any disconnect in any level of any place in your life, these decrees are huge to say, you know, God is the only power and presence acting to me, through me, and all around me. God is the only living presence acting to me, through me, and around me. Or I am the ascended Jesus Christ's permanent light, love, and victory already attained in my body, in my health, in my finances, in my marriage, in my community, in my relationships, in my business, in my church. You know, you fill in the blank. I say I am the ascended Jesus Christ, because there are a lot of Jesus Christ out there. You know, so there's people all over the world who have taken the name Jesus and or God, whether because spiritual reasons or whatever. I'm talking about the ascended Christ, the one who was raised from the dead and came back, the only one living God, the highest living, the only God in my book. And so I am a firm believer of Jesus Christ and what he did on the cross for me, and I realize that he came back and he ascended. And so I differentiate. I am God's permanent victory. I am already loved. I am the ascended Jesus Christ, permanent light, love, and victory already attained in my, and you fill in the blanks. I make other boundaries, like miracles happen to me everywhere I go. I am valued. I am loved. I am honored everywhere I go. Start decreeing these things. Get the Conscious Language book. Get the Conscious Language package, which you can get on my website. It includes 2 CDs, a book, a workbook. It's life-changing. There are a ton of references to different words that we choose to say and how they actually create chaos in our body, because it's the Babel language, and that's a whole different teaching. But when we're speaking true and we're speaking what God would say, and not saying things like, well, I can't, or I am sick, cancel. That powerful beginning, I am, that, you know, those words are huge. And God in you would never say that sentence. He would only say, I am that I am. There's nothing else but him. He is that he is. He can't be anything negative. He's only joy. He's only power. He's only love. He's only health. He's only relationship. He's only honor. He's only value. He is what he is. He is those things in you and in us. And we can walk through the power of that. We can do some of these quantum things on an energetic level. If there are relationships and or people and or situations, even from people who have passed on and been to be, you know, ascended to be to God, do some of these activations and say whatever you need to say and choose to say to change and shift your patterns within you. Because it will not only shift you, but it will shift your kids, your church, your family, everything in a moment. Literally in a moment. Both times that I did those quote things where I sat in my driveway, it was instant. He contacted me instantly. The moment I took off my ring, that moment that I didn't even share this with you, I had not heard from him for a couple weeks, and we weren't planning on talking or doing anything. And when the Lord told me to take off the ring, within 10 minutes he texted me and just said, hey, I was just checking on you, just seeing how you're doing, what are the doctors saying, you know, it's been a while, and I just wanted, is it okay if I touch base and see how you're doing or whatever. So, I mean, or I choose to remember exactly the words. All I know is I remember it being instant. When I disconnected, then that gave room for the real thing to come in its place, and for me to remember truth and realness. And so I ask you to do some of those things, to take time to decree every day, to take time to remember that you are your own divine partner, that there's no environmental thing that can shift for you to make the conditions helpful for you to be at ease. If you're relying on outside conditions to give you ease, and then you're going to have to not only control that forever, cancel, to make you have that ease and that peace, but it's going to be frustrating and exhausting, because it won't be based on anything that's real. It's going to be having to be controlling and manipulating that thing. And so cancel all that and say things like, I am honor. I am co-empowered. I am co-mission, meaning I'm on a mission with God. I am provision, meaning I have provision, and also I have provision. I am wealth. I am opulence. And again, the partnership thing is key. Partnership, like I said in the video earlier, went out for the promo on this. I did not realize how many things would fall into place just by getting my partnership with me and God straight and working. Everything's an inside job. So many things and so many patterns have shifted for me because I have worked in me, doing these activations, doing these decrees, and all of these things have come my way, based on that. I haven't even asked for most of the things. They're just happening automatically, out of doing this, out of doing mind mapping, out of creating my world, because I'm doing all this in truth, in purity, and living in my truth, living God's truth in me, living true, just like the angel said. You're not truly living unless you're living true. So I suggest that you take inventory. I challenge you to take inventory of anything that may be even off a hair, because how many of you know that if you go on a cruise to, let's say you're going to take a ship to Hawaii, if you're off even like a little bit on your coordinates, one little shift, you're going to end up somewhere completely different. And even with like GPS, you put in the wrong address, you're getting to the wrong place. So I encourage you to find out what your truth is, to find out what these patterns are that may need to be shifted, to go back and reconcile you, to find you, to reconnect with you again, to be who God truly called you to be in every aspect of your life. When you are your divine partner, when God in you is your divine partner, when He is your beloved and you are His, everything falls into place. He is the first love of all things. And so I hope this has helped, maybe connect some things for you. My health is great. I'm continuing to do the things that I'm doing because I'm told to continue the process. I just had some more testing done that should be back just to verify, that some things are in place. And for those of you who are curious, and it'll be almost a year now coming up since the diagnosis. And I appreciate you guys bearing with me on the story and listening in. I love you. I vote your victory. If and when you have any miracles, can you please report your miracles to me? I would love to hear how this has impacted you in any way, if it has, in the thread or via email or Facebook or whatever. I would love to hear if there's anything that I said, even one statement out of all of this that connected with you and helped you to connect some things and some shifts that you choose to make. And I love you, and I vote your victory. And this is 2017. Let's do it right. Let's do it true this year. I'm choosing to do it true. And it's amazing how many relationships have come out of the woodwork who finally could come in my space because I had worked on me. It's amazing how my business has shifted and business partners have come out of nowhere because God has helped me to be able to change that vibe within me and create myself, who I was and who I am and who I was always. Deuteronomy 8:18 says He has given us the ability to create wealth. And that word create, for instance, doesn't necessarily mean like He's going to give you a dream in the middle of the night and you're going to have an idea and then you go out and implement it. Create means to actually create your life. You get to create your life through your words, through mind mapping, through whatever choice you choose to use it. And wealth, He's been given us the ability to create wealth. Wealth doesn't just mean money. Although money is important, and I am super excited that I have the job that I have and I get to minister to people and love on people and pay my bills and have extra money to give away cars and to help people pay their rent and support them and support ministries all over. The thing is, we're supposed to be the head and the tail. Wealth doesn't just mean finances, though. Wealth means peace. Wealth means unity and love and provision and God, everything that God is. And so I love you. I bless you. I vote your victory. Please do report your miracles. I'd love to hear. I'm going to post some of these decrees. So if you choose to join in on this 2017, and I will talk to you soon or maybe see you on the road. I hope this helped some of you. All right, talk to you soon. Bye.